Typically, parents would do anything for their child, from working long hours to give them a better life to doing everything to protect them from the dangers outside. But what happens when the parent is the danger? These two stories, both from England, would shock even the most hardened criminals. The question of who comes first, a child or a romantic partner, is one that has been debated for centuries. But in the case of Nicola Priest, the tragic answer became clear when their daughter paid the ultimate price for her mother's obsession with a man named Callum Redfern. The 23-year-old mother lived in a modest apartment in the West Midlands with her two children, 3-year-old Kaylee Jade and a newborn. The toddler was full of energy and curiosity, like any child her age. On Nicola's TikTok account, the little girl could be seen giggling and trying to imitate her mother's dance moves. Charming videos showed a side of a relationship that seemed almost typical. But behind these seemingly happy moments, Nicola's priorities were far from what one could expect from a mother. Instead of focusing on the well-being of her children, she was consumed by her relationship with Callum, who also wasn't the father to either of them. In July 2020, just weeks before the horrific incident, Nicola sent a series of alarming text messages to Callum. In one of them, she described how she had struck her young daughter in anger, writing,
"I'm going to kill her because she keeps leaving the living room or going in the kitchen, so I've paled her one and smacked her for her nappy."
Callum's chilling response was far from what one would expect from a concerned partner.
"Good, give her one from me."
As the summer of 2020 progressed, Nicola's erratic behavior raised concerns among nearby residents. One neighbor called hearing a loud thud from the flat, followed by the sound of Kaylee Jade crying. When confronted, the mother brushed it off, saying that her daughter had fallen from her bed. Even her own mother, Debbie Windmill, was alarmed by the way Nicola treated her granddaughter. Fearing for the little girl's safety, Debbie contacted social services. When authorities conducted a welfare check, they found Kaylee Jade's bedroom nearly bare, with few signs that it was a safe, nurturing space for a child. Nicola, however, dismissed the concerns, claiming she was in the process of redecorating. It wasn't the first time Nicola had downplayed the seriousness of her behavior. But on the night of August 8, 2020, the situation took a deadly turn. Callum visited Nicola, and the couple's attention quickly turned to each other. Their attempts to be intimate were interrupted by Kaylee Jade, who was full of energy and wanted to stay up and play. But the playful interruptions were not well received. Frustrated and angry, Callum and Nicola directed their rage at the toddler. Over the course of the night, they brutally assaulted the 3-year-old. Her injuries were horrific. Medical experts later said that her wounds were comparable to those of a person hit by a vehicle or someone who had fallen from a significant height. It was a vicious attack, leaving her in unbearable pain. Despite Kaylee Jade's obvious suffering, neither Nicola nor Callum took immediate action to help her. The little girl vomited several times throughout the night, her condition worsening as hours passed. Instead of rushing her to the hospital or calling for help, the pair waited. It wasn't until the next day, August 9, 2020, that they finally dialed 999. But by then, it was too late. At just 3 years old, Kaylee Jade was pronounced dead. And Nicola's behavior in the weeks following her daughter's death added another layer of disbelief. Rather than showing remorse or staying off social media, she seemed to embrace the spotlight, posting numerous tributes to her daughter on TikTok, portraying herself as a grieving mother in search for sympathy. In one particularly unsettling post, Nicola lip-synced to the song "To My Parents" by Anna Clendening, mouthing the words, "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I know I messed up bad. I should have done better." For those who didn't know the truth, Nicola's social media presence might have portrayed her as a heartbroken mother. But in reality, her online activity painted a more erratic picture. Mixed in with the tearful tributes were videos of the 23-year-old reviewing makeup and performing viral dance routines. The disconnect between her posts and the reality of what had happened was jarring. Meanwhile, the investigation into Kaylee Jade's death was unfolding. Once authorities learned the full extent of the little girl's injuries, Nicola and Callum were immediately under suspicion. Neighbors' reports, CCTV footage and text messages between the two showed clear neglect and abuse. In court, both tried to deflect responsibility for the horrific crime. They turned on each other, attempting to shift the blame for the brutal attack. However, the evidence was overwhelming. The judge saw through it, saying, "You both knew you had seriously injured Kaylee. You, priest, did nothing to seek medical help. A prompt call could have saved Kaylee's life." In the end, both Nicola and Callum were found guilty of manslaughter. Nicola was sentenced to 15 years in prison, while Callum received 14 years for the same charge. They were also handed concurrent 3-year sentences for child cruelty. The idea that sparing the rod spoils the child is one that some parents take to heart. It comes directly from the Bible, and for Christina Robinson, it was more than just a saying. It was a justification for abuse. But her strict interpretation of this belief went far beyond discipline, leading to the tragic death of her 3-year-old son, Dwelania. Christina Robinson claimed hers was a household guided by biblical principles. She often pointed to Proverbs 13:24, "Spare the rod, spoil the child," to justify her strict approach to parenting. But what Christina called discipline quickly crossed the line, turning her home into a place of fear instead of care. If her son misbehaved, even in small ways, she would punish him. But how she enforced her rules wasn't just tough, it was cruel. A follower of the Black Hebrew Israelites, Christina explained that her actions were part of her beliefs, though she often described her faith as more of a lifestyle than a religion. Over time, her view of discipline turned into something much darker, using her interpretation of religious teachings to justify her increasingly harmful behavior. By late 2022, things had escalated. The 30-year-old's punishment became more extreme, and when her son needed help, she didn't take him to the doctor. Instead, she tried to handle things on her own. And as his condition worsened, she did nothing to get him the care he desperately needed. What happened next left everyone wondering how things could have gone so far. What makes this case even more disturbing is how detached Christina became from her role as a mother. While her son was enduring daily abuse, she was focused on expanding her family, speaking with potential lovers while her husband was away with the Royal Air Force. She expressed a desire to have at least 10 children and was actively looking for ways to achieve this goal. During a conversation with one of her potential partners on a dating app, she casually mentioned that her son was ill with burns and had thrown up, showing little concern or urgency about his suffering. Then, on November 5th, 2022, Christina's violent behavior escalated further. She shook her son violently, a fit of anger that likely caused his head to strike a hard surface. Unlike previous incidents, this time, Dwelania didn't cry or vomit. Instead, he became unresponsive, his small body no longer able to withstand the trauma. Rather than immediately calling for medical help, Christina contacted her husband, seeking advice before turning to Google for information on how to perform CPR on a child. Even with her son's life hanging in the balance, she delayed calling for help. When the 30-year-old finally did dial 999, it was too late. When paramedics arrived, they found Christina strangely calm, showing no signs of distress. CCTV footage later revealed her eerie composure as medics worked to resuscitate her son, but their efforts were in vain. By the time they reached the hospital, 3-year-old Dwelania was already gone. The investigation that followed uncovered a horrifying history of abuse. Medical examiners found 70 injuries on the boy's body, including burns, head trauma, and older injuries that had healed over time. Some so severe that experts likened them to what they might expect from someone involved in a high-impact accident. As police dug deeper, the evidence mounted. The severity of the physical abuse, combined with Christina's neglect, painted a devastating picture of the little boy's final weeks. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Christina pleaded not guilty to charges of child cruelty and murder. She claimed that her actions were justified by her religious beliefs, arguing that the Bible permitted her to discipline her child in this way. The trial was emotional, with many struggling to come to terms with the cruelty inflicted on such a young child. In the end, the jury saw her behavior for what it was: Systematic abuse disguised as discipline. Christina was found guilty on all counts and handed a life sentence. She will serve a minimum of 25 years before being eligible for parole. Before you go, I'd love to know if you like having multiple stories in one video. Let me know in the comments.